What up guys, SuperMel983 here bringing you another album review, and as you can see we're in a different location. CDs are all set up, but more to address on that in upcoming updates and purchases, which you'll see in future content. But anyway, today we're going to be doing an album review, and we're going to be reviewing what could possibly be, and there's a high chance of this, be my album of the year for 2020, because this album is just taking over my life at the moment. I'm not even joking. But yeah, this is what I'm going to be reviewing for you today. Yeah, this is the new album from the band the Acacia strain, entitled Slow Decay. This is released under Rise Records. Now, I'll be very surprised if you're into deathcore and you haven't heard the Acacia strain. They are a big namesake in the genre itself, and also in the hardcore scene as well, because they are a very fine line sort of band. They cross both boundaries of deathcore and hardcore. The best way I can describe it, if you take the intensity and the barbaric heaviness of deathcore, but then have more of a the sort of vibes and the song structures of hardcore, then you've basically got the Acacia strain. And quite frankly, I've been a big fan of these guys for quite a few years now, and I first got introduced to the band back in, I think it was around 2012, I think it was 2011, 2012, when they released, well, roughly around the same time they released Death is the Only Mortal and Wormwood. So it was in between that sort of segment, and I fell in love with Wormwood at first, and then Death is the Only Mortal just made us get absolutely hooked on the band. And that album still to me is just a gloomy sounding album, and something in the deathcore world that I was listening to at the time, it just really broke a new sound to me with that kind of influence of like Beatdown and really slower tempos and stuff like that, and not necessarily going straight up down tempo sort of thing, because that's not what the Acacia strain is about. They are about hitting hard and bringing the riffs and the breakdowns left, right and centre. And yeah, I've been a fan of every material that they've released. I've even gone back into their old discography and stayed in touch with them over their newer discography. And Which, in my opinion, was one of their best albums. And also Grave Bloom. Even though Grave Bloom was a bit of a slow burner for me until I started to really get into it, and it became like one of my go-to albums for the band themselves. So yeah, you can imagine that I was really hyped for some new material from these guys. And back last year in 2019, they dropped a surprise album which was called It Comes in Waves. Now that was only a half an hour album, and quite frankly, listening to it, I felt it was a bit of a sleeper, in all honesty. I'm not saying it's a bad album, because it is still a good listen, but in my opinion it just didn't pack as much of an impact as the likes of Grave Bloom, Which, and all the other albums did beforehand. I just felt it just lacked something a little bit. It was good, and I do still listen to it. I just think it's not the best in their discography personally, so I was left a little bit disappointed, I'm not gonna lie. But then again, in February of this year, they started to tease something that was in the wake, like another album. And for me anyway, I was like, what, these guys are not stopping? So they released in February a little single, 2-track single, which was entitled D, which is a pretty simple like thing, you know. And I thought they've got to be teasing something. And then a few weeks later, I believe it was, they released another single called E, which I was like, okay, they're starting to tease something a little bit more now. And then C came out, and then A, and then they concluded with Y. So all these singles had 2 tracks on, so we had 5 releases and 10 tracks. So what was lying in wake? Was this just it? Just 5 singles spelling out Decay? What is it? And then we get the news that they were releasing another album entitled Slow Decay, and this artwork, I might as well add, was the start of it. It was the D artwork, but they've obviously put the Acacia strain Slow Decay on there. But they announced it, and it was going to have a further 2 tracks on it, and this obviously hyped me up, because I'm not going to lie, with them releasing 2 tracks leading up to this album, like 2 tracks every couple of weeks, it kind of just made it just a little bit more exciting to listen to. Like every single that they dropped, I was listening on repeat, and then the next one would come out and listen to that on repeat, and then here we are with a full-length album entitled Slow Decay. So it's 12 tracks, if you can count, and it runs around 44 minutes in length. And why is this album becoming a go-to album for me, and why I'm safely saying could be my album of the year for 2020? And it's pretty simple, really. This is one of the most hardest albums I have heard this year. I've heard some really heavy albums, like immediately comes to mind Body Snatcher and Lorna Shore are definitely heavy albums, and Body Snatcher definitely the most pummeling out of those two. But this one creates a different kind of massive assault on you, because this is such a beefy sounding album. Like, this puts all other Acacia Strain albums, in my personal opinion, in the shade when it comes to heaviness, because this has so much might, so much grit, and so much animosity behind it that it just takes over. I mean, the first listen I had through listening to this, I knew straight away within like 2 tracks maybe of listening to it, I knew this is probably going to be my album of the year. Like, honestly, like, getting into this album just was such a pleasure to listen to. Like, it just took over as I was pulling the famous stink face when every breakdown hit, when every hard riff hit. Like, it wasn't like just them trying to be like the heaviest band in the world. Everything made sense on this album, that every heavy part was there for a reason. Every like slower, doomier, gloomier parts, because that's another thing that I do admire about later Acacia Strain stuff, is it's not just straight up like heavy riffs after heavy riffs. There is a lot of attention to detail in incorporating some like gloomier, doomier sort of elements to create this really sadistic sort of mentality behind it. It's just so baffling to listen to. Like, there's a lot of bands that really emanate and take a lot of influence from the Acacia Strain over the years, and quite frankly, there's no band that'll ever be able to pull off the Acacia Strain sound other than the Acacia Strain themselves. And even though it comes away with a little bit disappointing to me, this album just more than makes up for it in more ways than I can care to measure, you know, or care to say, should I say. And that being said, like, I listen to this on Spotify quite a lot when I listen to it, but when I got the CD, I found myself listening to it more in the car. Like, it never left me car for, well, it still hasn't left me car. It's literally only left me car recently to do this review, you know, just to showcase the CD. You know how it works. But honestly, I absolutely love this album to bits through and through. Like, there is not a bad track on this album. There's no sleepers. There's no moments that I'm like, it's alright, or anything along those sort of lines. Like, this album, to me anyway, is the epitome of heavy riffs, man. It's quite dreary at some points, in the best possible way, I might as well, but it just really encapsulates, no pun intended, the slow decay sort of vibe in there. It really feels like a decaying sound of brutality, just getting beaten down on you with every means necessary, and it just really took us by, it actually kind of took us by surprise, because like, I'd heard most of these songs like leading up to its release, but at the same time, when I heard them in a full release, and also in a different sort of order, because like Decay, D is not like the first 2 tracks, or Y is not the last 2 tracks, or the second last 2 tracks. It's kind of shuffled up, but it just makes it just seem like a fresher listen, and it just really overall adds to it, and quite frankly, it delivers. The musicianship is another thing that I absolutely love on this album, because every bit of playability on this album is just absolutely fantastic. The drums sound very natural sounding in their delivery. Like, they don't sound over compressed, or, you know, like it just sounds like a completely natural sounding album. Like, even just from the guitar perspective as well, because like, you can tell when it's over digitized on a lot of deathcore releases, if you ask me, and in my opinion, it somewhat takes away from it, whereas this one definitely feels very natural sounding, but it still packs a massive, massive wallop behind it, and quite frankly, it just makes it just sound so much more dynamic and just more natural sounding, and it just really took us by a surprise when I first did it, because I was expecting like them to follow along that sort of line of like going more digital sounding, but no ways by any of that means. This is a full sound. It's really thick and beefy sounding, and that's what I think really amplifies the heavy and just makes it smack you in the face. I'm going to keep on punching my hand and I'm going to get a bruise, but honestly, it really is such a beefy sounding release. And then moving on to the vocals, I will say this, the vocal performance on this album is just so intense and just full of rage and animosity, and that's one thing I feel like it's definitely connected me a lot more with the Acacia stream, because not only is there you know, songs just very heavy and brutal sounding and just filled with so much anger, the vocals on top of it are just so filled with rage, man. Like, Vincent is a one-of-a-kind vocalist. His rage level in his vocals is just incredible, and on top of that, he is, in my opinion, a lyrical fucking genius. Just the words that he puts in and the expression in it just beggars belief, man. I actually think he is definitely one of the most underrated vocalists in metal in general, for his delivery and for his lyricism. It's just absolutely incredible, and it's all on Slow Decay, if you ask me. And another thing I do admire about the Acacia, especially as of recently, like, over the years, they have had guest spots. They've had, like, I can remember the singer from All That Remains and Mitch Lucker being on The Dead Walk, I think the name of the album was, off the top of my head. Yeah, The Dead Walk was on a song on that. But, and they've had Jamie Jaster of Hatebreed and Kirk Weinstein from, or Weinstein, yeah, Weinstein I think it is, from Crowbar doing guest spots. Yep, that's all well and good and stuff. But really recently, they've started getting lesser known vocalists on their tracks. I mean, there's a few guest spots on here. You've got what's her name again? Jess Ninks of Mortality Rate, I think the band's called. Yeah, not a very well known band. The singer of Left Behind, the singer of Jesus Piece, and who was the other one? Oh yeah, and Courtney from Spirit Box. Now, yeah, those guest spots, they're not very well-known bands, like, by any means. Like, they are underground, and they are starting to get a bit more rep, but they are quite low. They're not like Hatebreed sort of level or Crowbar sort of level. They are really underground, and I feel like that gives them a little bit more exposure. So I have massive respect for the Acacia, and they've done that for the past couple of years, like on Coma, which definitely comes to mind, and Grave Gloom, sorry, my bad. They've brought the guest spots on there of like lesser known bands, and this one is no exception. This is absolutely fantastic. For tracks that I definitely recommend you check out, I definitely see the song that definitely is my favourite is 1000 Painful Stings, which is featuring Courtney from Spirit Box. Like, that song just feels blissful, but it's so crushingly heavy and quite doomy as well. And when that was on, I believe it was on Y, if I'm not mistaken, I fell in love with that. That was definitely my favourite of the 5 singles, in my opinion. But what a song, man. Like, it really put us in awe listening to it. And another song I would definitely say is Solace and Serenity. What a mammoth of a song, man. What a mammoth of a song. I would also say, what's the song? Chinamaster? Yeah, I believe that's that. That one might be the heaviest song I have heard this year. Like, that is a non-stop fucking beatdown, man. Like, that is an absolute assault on you. And quite frankly, there's not a bad song on this. Those two are particular favourites of mine, and if I was to pick another one, it would be Crippling Poison, probably. I mean, just from front to back, I can't stop listening to this album, and this is, in my opinion, one of the best albums I have heard this year, and quite frankly, as I said, it's got a high fucking chance of being my album of the year. It's knocked off Viscera's Obsidian in my top albums document that I've got, because Viscera Obsidian is absolutely amazing and still could be album of the year, but this one for me, as it stands, is my album of the year. And I might as well say, gorgeous fucking artwork. It really stands out in my opinion. You just wouldn't expect it to be such an album like this, in all honesty. And I might as well show you, this was the artwork for the 5 singles. So starting here with D, as you can see, 5 pounds, D-E-C-E-Y. Yeah, just really, I love that artwork approach. Like Caleb, I think his name is, or Caleb, did an absolutely incredible job with the artwork, and quite frankly, it kind of feels a bit misleading, but I love that sort of factor. Like, you would think this is a full-on like doom or sort of maybe even a prog rock sort of album, but in my personal opinion, it works, and quite frankly, this album is an absolute beast. So yeah, I would highly recommend you check out the Acacia's new album, Slow Decay. By all means, check out It Comes in Waves. Maybe you feel differently than I do. I know there's a lot of people who prefer that, but to me anyway, the Acacia Slow Decay is definitely going to be a 10 out of 10 album. They've gone into the double digits with their albums now. This is their 10th studio album, and quite frankly, this has unlocked a new beast within the band. Honestly, it echoes the old stuff very well, but it's just something else and more, if you ask me. So yeah, make sure you check it out, and I'll see you until next video. And remember, stay metal, and I'll see you later.